Welcome back to the deep dive. For years, video games were kind of seen as just this niche thing, right?
Yeah, maybe for kids or like a very specific type of person.
Exactly. But if you haven't been paying attention, that world has just exploded.
Yeah.
It's enormous now, always changing, and it's having some, well, pretty surprising effects on people's lives.
Including their health, which is fascinating.
Totally.
Gaming's definitely gone mainstream. Its influence isn't just about entertainment anymore. We're seeing big shifts in who's playing,
Yeah.
challenging those old ideas about age and tech. And there's even like serious research looking into cognitive benefits.
And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We've got a really interesting stack of sources for this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've pulled from articles looking at gaming's benefits, the changing audience. There's a biography of someone who's been a major player in the industry for a long, long time.
Okay.
We've got transcripts from videos that really scrutinize specific controversies, marketing claims, even excerpts from a private investment pitch.
An investment pitch. Wow.
And a quick look at some AI-generated marketing copy possibly related to it.
Okay, so it's a really diverse set of materials.
Yep.
Gives us different angles, right? The big picture landscape, an individual story, the business side.
And the critical analysis, yeah. Looking at what was claimed versus maybe what the reality was.
Got it.
So our mission, to go through all these sources, pull out the key insights, understand the different viewpoints, and try to, connect the dots. What does this all tell us about modern gaming?
Absolutely. It's about sifting through it all, trying to get a clearer picture of the trends, the people involved, and yeah, the different stories being told.
So let's start with something pretty surprising, actually, from the AARP source. It immediately jumps out that gaming is definitely not just for young people anymore.
That's a huge demographic shift, yeah. The article really points out the growing number of older adults getting into gaming, moving away from that old stereotype.
Yeah.
It shows people using games to connect, share experiences, even strengthen relationships, like grandparents playing with grandkids.
Which is great in itself, but then the article mentions potential health benefits. Things like improved reaction time, better attention span, memory, stuff we all think about as we age.
And the AARP article makes a pretty bold claim there. It suggests gaming could potentially help slow the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia by like 30%.
30%, wow.
Yeah. The idea presented is that the brain benefits from regular stimulation, kind of like a muscle, Use it or lose it, basically.
So certain games are like a brain workout.
That's the analogy the source uses, yeah.
Yeah.
And it also touches on the social side, meeting people online, making friends, maybe reconnecting.
Strengthening bonds.
Exactly. And beyond the social and cognitive, there's even a mention of a creativity boost from certain types of games.
Like what?
Games needing navigation skills, like driving games, or it even mentions titles like, I think, Super Mario 64.
Interesting. So while the article focuses mainly on the upsides and the broadening audience, it does give a brief nod to potential risks, right? Strangers, scams.
It does mention that briefly, yeah. But the main thrust is definitely the benefits and the changing demographics. The takeaway is this older audience finding real value in gaming.
Okay, so shifting from those broad trends to a specific person in this world, our sources introduce someone who's been, well, a really significant figure for decades.
Yes, Tommy Tallarico.
Yeah.
Looking at his biography and how he's mentioned elsewhere, he's definitely framed as a long-standing industry icon, active for over 35 years.
Mostly known for music composition.
Yeah, probably best known for that, but he's also been involved as a designer, producer, executive, wore a lot of hats.
And his bio lists some seriously impressive stuff. He founded Video Games Live.
Right, that touring concert series, orchestral game music in big venues.
And he also founded the Game Audio Network Guild, GANG.
Yeah, the bio really plays up the scale of his work. Talks about over 325 game titles, huge sales numbers like 250 million units, billions in revenue.
Wow.
Claims over 50 industry awards, mentions being in the Smithsonian. He did a TED Talk called Video Games Art in Disguise.
And links to massive franchises, Sonic, Pac-Man, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Metroid Prime, Mortal Kombat, plus specific games like Earthworm Jim.
And his score for Advent Rising is described in his bio as one of the greatest musical scores of all time. High praise.
Very high praise. And maybe crucially, given what else we looked at, his bio explicitly says he's the owner and creator of that famous Roblox oof sound.
Yes, that claim comes up prominently.
Okay. This is where it gets particularly interesting because one source, this private deal room document, seems to be an investment pitch directly linked to him.
Yes, it introduces a Tom. And when you piece that together with other sources, Wikipedia, that Slopes game room documentary transcript,
Yeah.
it's clearly Tommy Tallarico and his vision for a new console, the Intellivision Amico.
And the target market in that pitch, it lines up perfectly with what we just heard from the AARP source, doesn't it?
It really does. It's fascinating how closely it aligns. The pitch specifically calls out families with young kids under 11, citing this huge market, 25 million U.S. households, 4 times that globally.
Right.
And, significantly, it targets older baby boomers and seniors. It explicitly tries to connect to that potential health benefits discussion, the stated goal, bring people back together through gaming.
And how is the console supposed to achieve that, according to the pitch?
It really hammered on simplicity and social play. The controller, masterable in 5 minutes, supposedly.
Okay.
Comes with 2 controllers, standard, wireless charging. Games were planned for these RFID chips.
Like contactless cards.
Exactly. You scan it with the controller, makes it easy to play at a friend's house. It was all pitched as ease of use, shared fun.
What about the games themselves and the cost?
The pitch highlighted curated games, all planned for $9.99 or less. And crucially, it said the console would include 6 full games right out of the box.
They contrasted that with the Wii, right?
Yeah, they claimed the Wii only came with demos. The whole pitch emphasized building trust, offering high value.
And for potential investors, what was the promise there?
It pitched a revenue share model, positioning it as an alternative to, like, traditional VCs, venture capitalists.
Okay.
It mentioned securing a $150 million manufacturing line of credit.
Right.
And stated that $25 million in pre-orders and sales revenue was expected pretty soon after the pitch date, like late summer.
And the projected returns, they sounded ambitious.
Hugely ambitious.
Yeah.
The pitch quoted anticipated returns of 3x over 3 years, even in what they call the absolute worst sales scenario.
Worst case 3x.
That was the claim. And they projected a 10x return if 25 million consoles were sold. And the minimum investment was pretty low, like $250 to $1,000.
Wow. They even compared it to massive tech successes, didn't they? Shopify, MuleSoft.
Yeah, Carta, Coupa, highlighting those huge historical valuation growths. The framing was clear. Get in on the ground floor of the next big thing.
But then we look at the other sources, and a very different picture starts to emerge. Delays, discrepancies, what some call the Amico disaster.
Yes, sources like the Slopes Game Room doc transcript, the H-Bomb video transcript, Reddit threads, Wikipedia, they paint this alternative narrative. You see a history of repeated delays, multiple crowdfunding campaigns, Fig, Republic, another site.
Often using the same pitch video.
Reportedly using that same rocket ship pitch video across different campaigns, yeah.
And there were questions about some of the key people involved, the ones highlighted in the pitch.
Right. Sources discuss how the claims about, say, Jay Allard, an Xbox co-founder, didn't fully align with documents like an SEC letter.
SEC being the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Correct. Their response apparently clarified he was an advisor late in hardware development, stopped being full-time after that, and was available but didn't have a material role in product development later on. Similar questions were raised about claims regarding someone named Kara Aka, too.
And the actual game footage that eventually surfaced, it didn't always match the polished vision.
Footage discussed in the sources showed, well, issues. Noticeable lag, stuttering animations, commands apparently not registering properly. And significantly, controls sometimes not matching what was happening on screen. A specific example cited was in footage for a game called Finnegan Fox.
And the sources even mentioned Tommy Tallarico's explanation for that specific issue in the Finnegan Fox clip.
Yes, his explanation, as reported, was that he intentionally inverted the controls just for that clip.
Intentionally, why?
The reported reason was to mess with people haters.
Okay. And the console also had some pretty strict rules for the games themselves, didn't it?
The sources detailed this, yeah. Games had to be rated E or E10.
Yeah.
Plus so, for everyone or everyone 10 and up.
Family friendly.
Very family friendly. Easily playable, simple instructions, balanced school levels, had to pass a 7 out of 10 internal quality check, cost less than $10, and be limited to 2D or 2.5D graphics.
That's quite restrictive for developers.
Definitely imposes significant limitations on the types of games possible for the platform.
And reportedly, there were some pretty controversial claims made about competitor consoles, like the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. The Slopes Game Room transcript, for example, quotes claims that the Switch has the most adult, violent, mature, and even Europe content. It specifically alleges things like full genitalia child rear molestation drug use, supposedly shown in Switch game versions, but not on PlayStation.
That sounds extreme.
The source itself characterizes that specific claim as a real stretch compared to the actual content typically found on the Switch.
And just as a side note, one source analyzed some marketing copy, possibly using AI tools?
Yeah, using something like ChatGPT, the analysis suggested some promotional materials from the venture. Very enthusiastic, lots of cliches. Emoji showed patterns that could indicate AI generation.
Interesting.
Whether it is AI or just following common marketing formulas is hard to say, but it's an interesting observation about modern promo language.
Okay, let's widen the lens a bit, beyond just the Amico console. The sources also dig into other parts of Tommy Tallarico's career and public statements, especially around claims and credit.
Right, and this is where that sound story becomes really central in sources like the H-Bomb video transcript.
The Roblox sound.
Yeah. While his bio claims he owns and created it, the video explores evidence suggesting the sound actually originated in a 1999 game called Messiah.
Oh.
And metadata within those game files reportedly points to a sound engineer named Joey Kuras as the creator.
So a direct conflict there between the bio claim and this other evidence.
Exactly, a contrasting narrative. Joey Kuras credited on Messiah versus Tommy Tallarico's public claims of creating it himself. The H-Bomb transcript notes this discrepancy. It points out how Tommy's explanations reportedly shifted, sometimes using we, later using I. It mentions a deleted tweet where we was allegedly used.
And Joey Kuras, the sound engineer, he has other credits.
Oh yeah, a huge career. Credited on massive titles like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, Spider-Man, Gears of War, even Fortnite. A very established figure in game audio.
And the sources suggest this wasn't the only instance of, let's say, questionable claims or credit issues?
Other examples are discussed, yeah. Claims about working on Tony Hawk Pro Skater, where game credits and reviews reportedly don't list him in those roles. And significant discrepancies when looking into claims about video games' live attendance in venues.
Like the claim about playing to over 752,000 people in China at the Bird's Nest Stadium?
Exactly. The analysis in the H-Bomb video questions that. It points out the Bird's Nest capacity is around 80,000.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the actual Guinness World Record documentation for that specific VGL record
Yes.
reportedly lists the venue not as the Bird's Nest, but as the Beijing Exhibition Theater.
Which is much smaller.
Much smaller, capacity around 2,700 seats. And the documented attendance for that record-setting show was 2,086 people.
A huge difference from 752,000.
A massive difference. The source also raises questions about the validation or status of some other Guinness World Records claimed.
So the numbers and locations in some public statements seem quite different from what other documents suggest.
That's the conclusion drawn in those critical sources, yes. And they try to connect these specific instances to a broader theme in the games industry.
Which is?
The historical problem of ensuring proper credit for everyone involved in making games, especially people in less visible roles, sound designers, composers, programmers.
Right, like the examples given of female composers at Capcom credited under pseudonyms back in the day.
Exactly. Or how work sometimes gets primarily attributed to a big name, a figurehead, even if others did a lot of the actual labor.
Like the Michael Jackson and Sonic 3 rumors mentioned.
Precisely. The sources discuss how credit can kind of consolidate around famous individuals, even if it wasn't solely their work. The bigger point is the industry's history, where contributions, especially from women or behind-the-scenes staff, sometimes got overlooked or misattributed.
Okay. So, putting this all together, this deep dive has really taken us on quite a journey from the surprising growth and changing face of who plays games.
Yeah, that whole demographic shift.
Through the really ambitious vision for a product like the Amico, and then the sort of contrasting reality shown in other sources.
The delays, the funding issues, the questions.
And finally, digging into these complexities around public claims, how credit works or doesn't work, and the historical narratives within the industry itself.
It really highlights just how dynamic the gaming world is. Always changing who plays, why they play, the business is trying to reach them. It's constantly evolving.
And it certainly underlines the need, doesn't it? The need to look beyond just the polished marketing or one person's claims.
Absolutely. Cross-referencing, looking at multiple sources, it's critical to get a fuller picture, especially with something this complex.
Understanding any situation, really, but especially in a fast-moving industry with these kinds of complicated histories, it demands that kind of critical look, comparing different viewpoints. It's been Quite something going through these materials. We've seen the potential of gaming for new audiences, the immense challenge of launching a new product with such high hopes.
And the fallout when those hopes aren't met.
Yeah. And there's ongoing questions about how credit gets assigned, how stories are built in an industry with such a rich, but maybe sometimes hidden history.
It really underscores how everything is connected. The audience, the tech, the business side, and the very human element of who creates things and whether they get recognized for it.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a pretty big thought to chew on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In a world just drowning in information, and these carefully crafted stories everywhere, how do you, the listener, decide what's actually accurate? And maybe even more importantly, how do we as a community make sure that the contributions of everyone involved in making the things we enjoy are properly remembered and acknowledged?